the news is about to drop, so we're okay to talk about this, but I did tear my MCL. And if you're going to hurt your knee, that is like the best possible case. And so, I'll have surgery Friday.
Okay.
But again, out of all things, it could have been way worse. So like, I'm taking this as a dub, but I'm officially 3 for 3 on being fined by the WNBA.
Holy shit. For this? For the pod? Again?
But I don't think that there was no ill intent. I think it was basketball play. I was just in the wrong spot at the wrong time. She felt like there was no way that she would go in there and intentionally try to hurt me. And so I had nothing but love for Bria.
Sophie Cunningham just broke her silence, and what she revealed shocked everyone. After speculation, rumors, and fan outrage, Sophie finally told her side of the story. And trust me, it wasn't what anyone expected. She confirmed the injury. She admitted the pain. But the real twist? Instead of calling out Bria Hartley for what fans swore was a dirty play, Sophie defended her. That's right, the collision that ended her season, the moment that had Twitter lighting up with slow-mo replays and accusations. Sophie says Bria didn't mean it, but that's not the only shocker. Because right when you think it ends there, Sophie drops another bomb. She's been fined yet again by the WNBA. This time for comments about Paige Bueckers, proof that the league still doesn't like it when its players speak too openly. So now the questions are flying. Was Hartley's hit really clean? Why is Sophie defending her? And is the WNBA trying to silence one of its most outspoken stars? When Sophie Cunningham finally spoke out about her injury, the news hit like a thunderclap. For days, fans had been bracing themselves for the worst-case scenario. Social media was flooded with slow-motion replays, speculative doctor threads, and emotional Fever fans begging for good news. Everyone feared the dreaded 3 letters that end careers, ACL. But Sophie set the record straight. It wasn't her ACL. She confirmed she tore her MCL. And while that's still serious and season-ending, it was, in her own words, the best possible case for a knee injury. The moment she revealed it, you could almost feel an online sigh of relief. ACL tears can keep players out for more than a year, sometimes even altering the course of their careers entirely. An MCL tear, on the other hand, is brutal but far more forgiving. The recovery is measured in months, not years. Fans instantly flipped from heartbreak to cautious optimism. Sophie's season was over, but her career? Safe. That was the silver lining everyone desperately needed. Still, the pain in her voice was clear. She admitted she felt the dreaded pop the second Bria Hartley crashed into her leg during the Fever vs. Sun matchup. She knew instantly it wasn't just a minor tweak. She wasn't getting back up and shaking this one off. It was one of those moments athletes fear most, when your body makes a sound that tells you everything has changed. Sophie said she felt it immediately, but instead of spiraling into frustration, she chose to focus on gratitude. In her words, she was just thankful it wasn't worse. But make no mistake, even with the so-called best case, this was still a season-ending blow to the Fever. Sophie had been one of their toughest role players, a spark plug who could bring energy and confidence on nights when the roster looked battered and broken. Losing her wasn't just about the stats she brought to the court, it was about the intangibles, leadership, toughness, and the fearless way she carried herself. For a team already riddled with injuries, this was yet another gut punch in what's become a nightmare season. What makes it sting even more is the timing. Sophie had been carving out her role with the Fever, proving that she wasn't just another player on the roster. She was a fighter who earned her place. And then, in a single collision, it was all ripped away. The irony is cruel. She wasn't even making an aggressive play when it happened. She was just in help-side defense, in the paint, when Hartley came crashing down. Wrong place, wrong time. Season over. Fans immediately started arguing online, as they always do. Was it a freak accident? Was it dirty? Some slowed down the clip frame by frame, pointing to Hartley's smile afterward as proof of bad intent. Others pushed back, saying it was clearly a bang-bang basketball play, nothing more. But one thing everyone could agree on, Sophie Cunningham's season was done, and the Fever's year had just gotten even darker. And that leaves the question hanging in the air. What really happened on that play? Was Sophie just unlucky, or is there more to the story than she's letting on? The moment Sophie Cunningham's knee buckled, fans didn't just see an injury, they saw a culprit. The internet lit up instantly, replaying the clip from every angle, and one name kept getting dragged through the mud, Bria Hartley. To a lot of people watching, the collision didn't just look physical, it looked calculated. Words like dirty, reckless, and intentional started flying across social media, and within hours, Bria was trending for all the wrong reasons. Normally, this is where the injured player comes in with some shade or at least a passive-aggressive line about how the league needs to protect its stars. But Sophie Cunningham? She flipped the whole script. On her podcast, she shocked everyone by saying Bria Hartley didn't mean to hurt her. It wasn't intentional, Sophie said flatly, cutting through the noise. In one sentence, she poured cold water on the firestorm of outrage. And you could almost hear the collective gasp from fans who expected her to come out swinging. And then came the twist that nobody saw coming. Sophie admitted that yes, there are players in the WNBA who might actually try to take her out. The league is physical, rivalries are real, and bad blood sometimes spills onto the court. But she made it crystal clear, Bria isn't one of them. That line hit like a sledgehammer. Not only did Sophie defend the very player who collided with her, but she also hinted at a darker truth, that there are players out there with bad intentions. The subtext was almost louder than the words themselves. If Sophie's not afraid to say this, then who exactly is she talking about? That's what made her defense of Bria so fascinating. Sophie wasn't just standing up for her, she was reshaping the entire narrative around the play. Suddenly, it wasn't a story about Hartley being dirty. It was about the WNBA being a battleground where rivalries can get ugly, and Sophie choosing to draw a line between accidents and intent. Fans couldn't decide what shocked them more, her compassion for Bria or her blunt honesty about the league's hidden grudges. And while some fans respected her loyalty, others weren't buying it. Comments flooded in. No way, that wasn't intentional. She's just protecting her friend. If that was anybody else, Sophie would be furious. It became one of those classic sports debates where no one can fully agree, but everyone has an opinion. By defending Bria, Sophie might have stopped the hate from spiraling out of control, but she also sparked a whole new round of questions about what really goes on in WNBA locker rooms. But Sophie wasn't done shocking people, because just when fans thought her podcast was about forgiveness, unity, and standing up for her peers, she dropped another bombshell, and this one had nothing to do with Bria Hartley. If you thought the Bria Hartley twist was wild, Sophie Cunningham had another curveball ready, because in the very same podcast, she admitted the WNBA had fined her, again, not for trash talk on the court, not for shoving someone after a hard foul. Nope. Sophie was fined for simply talking about Paige Buchers. On her show, Sophie joked about Paige having what she called a blue blood whistle. Basically, saying the UConn star turned Fever rookie was already getting superstar calls before even proving herself in the league. It wasn't hateful, it wasn't out of pocket, it was just straight honesty, the kind of raw commentary fans actually love. But the league? Oh no, the league didn't like that one bit. The WNBA slapped Sophie with another fine, sending a message loud and clear. Watch your mouth or you'll pay for it. And here's where things get messy. Fans online immediately split into two camps. Some were rolling their eyes, saying Sophie should have known better than to poke at the league's newest golden girl. But way more people were furious at the WNBA. Because how does this league expect to grow when it punishes its most outspoken personalities for simply keeping it real? Fans want transparency, they want spice, they want the drama. Yet the W keeps trying to sanitize its product, even when it's obvious that controversy is what drives engagement. This fine wasn't just about Sophie versus Paige. It raised a bigger question. Is the WNBA silencing its players? Think about it. A'ja Wilson gets roasted for being too confident. Angel Reese gets targeted for being too loud. And now Sophie Cunningham gets fined for daring to say Paige Buchers might be benefiting from star treatment. At some point, you have to ask, is the league more worried about protecting its image than letting its players be authentic? And the craziest part? Sophie didn't even walk it back. She stood by what she said, telling her fans she'd rather be fined for speaking her truth than sit back and pretend everything's perfect. That's the kind of energy fans rally behind, the type of defiance that makes players into cult heroes. But for the W, it just meant more tension, more bad headlines, and more evidence that the relationship between league office and its stars is getting shaky. But Sophie wasn't done stirring the pot. Because after the fines, after the injury talk, after defending Bria Hartley, she turned her sights to something even bigger. The train wreck that has been the Indiana Fever's season. The Indiana Fever were supposed to finally turn the corner this year. After years of rebuilding, stockpiling draft picks, and hyping up a young core, 2025 was meant to be the season when everything came together. Caitlin Clark bringing star power, Aaliyah Boston anchoring the paint, and Sophie Cunningham arriving with that fiery edge the Fever desperately needed. On paper, this team looked ready to break out. But then reality came crashing down, hard. First, Sydney went down. Then Sophie herself suffered that brutal MCL tear. And even Clark, the face of the league, has been battling through nagging injuries that just won't go away. It feels like every time Indiana takes one step forward, the basketball gods shove them 2 steps back. Cunningham summed it up best on her podcast with a line that's both hilarious and depressing at the same time. You can't make this up. Because honestly, if you scripted this for Netflix, people would roll their eyes and say it was too unrealistic. The Fever haven't just been unlucky, they've been cursed. Opposing fans joke about Indianapolis bad karma, but for the players living it, this is their careers, their livelihoods, their legacies. Imagine grinding through the offseason, working on chemistry, buying into a new system, only for the season to be ripped apart by injuries before it even gets going. It's devastating, and it's left the locker room constantly scrambling just to survive the next game. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite all of this chaos, Sophie insisted the locker room is holding together. She didn't sugarcoat the pain, the frustration, or the long nights of rehab, but she made it clear the team hasn't fractured. "We still show up," she said, "because we don't know how to quit." That resilience might not show in the win-loss column, but it tells you something about the culture Indiana is trying to build. Still, fans can't help but wonder if all this adversity is taking a toll on Sophie herself. She came to Indiana to be a difference maker, not a spectator in street clothes. And now, with her contract situation looming and the team's future uncertain, the question becomes bigger than just recovery. Can the Fever survive another wasted year without making drastic changes? And more importantly, will Sophie still be part of that future when the dust settles? Because what happens next could decide not just the Fever's direction, but Sophie's entire career in Indiana. The Sophie Cunningham saga didn't just stay on the court, it exploded online. The Bria Hartley collision instantly divided fans. One side of the internet is screaming, "That was a dirty play, suspend her!" While the other side insists it was just bad luck, a basketball accident that got blown out of proportion. And then Sophie shocked everyone by stepping in herself, defending Bria, and telling the world it wasn't intentional. That alone flipped the entire conversation. Suddenly, people weren't just debating Hartley's play, they were debating Sophie's character for backing her. But that wasn't even the biggest uproar. The fines turned into a wildfire. Fans are furious that Sophie keeps getting punished just for talking. The Paige Bjorker's blue blood whistle comment set social media ablaze, because let's be real, it touched a nerve. The WNBA doesn't like when its players pull back the curtain and speak on the politics of the game. And now fans are asking, is this really about protecting professionalism? Or is it about silencing players who aren't afraid to call it like it is? For some fans, Sophie became a martyr the second the fine dropped. And here's where it gets emotional. Fever fans are rattled. They just watched their team collapse under the weight of injuries, with Sophie, Sydney, and Clark all sidelined at different points. Now, on top of that, they're scared Sophie might not even be part of the team's future. You scroll through comments and you see it all. Heartbreak, anger, paranoia. One fan said, "If the Fever let her walk, it's a bigger L than half the losses this season." Another wrote, "She's the only one with the guts to speak for the fans. The league hates her, but we need her." That kind of energy shows just how much she means to the Indiana fan base. The bigger picture here? Sophie isn't just one player in one franchise's rough year. She's become a symbol of something much bigger. The fight for WNBA players to actually have a voice. Too often, stars are fined for saying what fans are already thinking. Too often, personalities are punished instead of celebrated. Sophie Cunningham embodies that clash between individuality and control, between honesty and silence. And whether you love her or hate her, you can't deny she's forcing this conversation into the spotlight. At the end of the day, Sophie's story is about more than an MCL tear or a dirty play or a podcast fine. It's about what the WNBA is going to be in this next era. Is it going to embrace outspoken stars, let players be raw and unfiltered, and give fans the drama they crave? Or is it going to keep slapping fines, pretending everything's squeaky clean, and risk pushing its most passionate voices away? That's the battle Sophie's caught in the middle of. And that brings us full circle, because everything she's said, every injury she's fought through, and every fine she's paid leads to one massive question that still hasn't been answered. What does all of this mean for her career moving forward? The injury was bad enough. The fines were bad enough. But now comes the real debate that has Fever fans split right down the middle. What's next for Sophie Cunningham in Indiana? Will she even be wearing a Fever jersey once she recovers? Or will the front office quietly move on from the headache that has suddenly become one of the most polarizing players in the WNBA? Let's start with the pessimists. There's a group of fans, and even a few media voices, saying the Fever might be better off letting Sophie walk. The logic? She's banged up, she's outspoken, she's attracting fines and headlines, and Indiana is already dealing with enough chaos from the injury bug. In their eyes, why add more drama when you're trying to build a young, stable core around Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston? For this camp, the best way to turn the page is to turn away from Sophie. But then there's the other side, and it's not a small one. These people argue Sophie is exactly the kind of player you want on a championship-caliber roster. She doesn't need 30 minutes or 20 shots. She knows her role. She brings energy, toughness, and grit. She'll dive on the floor, talk trash, and light up a locker room even when she's not on the court. Add to that the fact she's on a team-friendly contract, and suddenly she looks less like a headache and more like a bargain that Indiana would be foolish to let go of. And let's be real, the Fever don't have a ton of veterans with Sophie's edge. Clark and Boston are stars, sure, but they're still young and figuring out how to lead. Having someone like Sophie, who's not afraid to speak her mind and take the heat, actually takes pressure off them. It gives the Fever a personality, an edge, and honestly, an identity. If the Fever cut ties, they might lose more than just a player. They might lose a backbone. But of course, this is where the debate gets spicy. Is that edge worth the fines, the controversy, the constant media attention? Some fans are all for it. They say it keeps the team relevant and gives Indiana a fighter who refuses to back down. Others shake their heads and argue that the drama overshadows the basketball. It's the eternal question every front office faces. Does the production and value outweigh the chaos that follows? And that's where we land right now. Sophie Cunningham is staring down one of the biggest forks in the road of her career. On one path, she's a valuable role player that Indiana locks in as part of their foundation. On the other, she's the expendable headache they quietly part ways with. The decision isn't just about Sophie, it's about what kind of identity the Indiana Fever want moving forward. And that brings us to the real question. Is Sophie Cunningham worth the drama? Sophie Cunningham may be sidelined, but she's not silent. Even with an MCL tear putting her season on pause, she's found a way to stay louder than ever. And maybe that's the biggest message here. You can take Sophie out of the game, but you can't take the fire out of Sophie. The WNBA can find her, critics can doubt her, but she keeps finding ways to speak her truth, and people keep listening. Now, Fever fans are left in limbo. Will Indiana keep her around, betting on her toughness and leadership to help this young roster mature? Or will they decide the drama is too much and quietly move on? It's a brutal reality. Sophie's future with the franchise could hinge more on politics than basketball, and that's a dangerous game for any player to be caught in. But the bigger picture here is about more than just Sophie. It's about a league trying to balance control with personality. It's about fans who crave unfiltered, authentic voices, and players like Sophie who are brave enough to give it to them. That's what makes her so polarizing, and that's what makes this story so much bigger than one injury or one fine. So, will Sophie bounce back stronger? Will the Fever stand by her? Or are we witnessing the beginning of her next chapter somewhere else? Nobody knows for sure. But one thing's certain, Sophie Cunningham may be sidelined right now, but she's not done making noise. And when she comes back, the WNBA better be ready. And now, I want to hear from you. Do you think the Fever should keep Sophie or move on? Was she right to defend Bria Hartley? And is the WNBA going too far with these fines? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is just getting started. And don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next time the league blows up in drama.